Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of our SEC Weekly Preview. I'm Coach Halley from the Coach's Box, Call It Like We See It podcast, and Off the Rails Media. I'm here again this week to preview just a couple of SEC games for you, like we have the last few weeks, and we're going to see just a little bit of kind of how the stretch run for the SEC is looking. We're going to talk about 3 games like we have in the past. And there's some pretty good matchups this week. Not everybody's in. It's a bye week for some of those teams. We're going to pass on the Citadel game against whoever they're playing from the SEC because that shouldn't even be a game anymore. Why are we still scheduling the Citadel? I have no idea. We need to stop doing that. All right. So let's get right into it. But first, actually, let's take one moment to say something about our presenting sponsor from Pepsi. This SEC preview segment is brought to you by Pepsi. Whether you're gearing up for game day, hanging out with friends, or just need that perfect, refreshing break, nothing hits the spot quite like an ice-cold Pepsi. Bold, crisp, and always refreshing, Pepsi is the taste that fuels the moment. So crack open a Pepsi and go watch some SEC football. All right. We are definitely going to preview the Texas A&M at Missouri. As you can see behind me, yes, I am a Missouri fan, but we'll get more into that later as we go. All right. But the first game we're going to preview is the new look LSU Tigers that nobody knows what they're going to look like this week, post Brian Kelly, going to number 4 Alabama. Alabama is a 10.5-point favorite. It's the 7:30 p.m. game Saturday night, and it's probably the marquee game of the week in the SEC. Even though only one of the teams is ranked. But the big question is going to be, what does LSU look like under interim coach Frank Wilson? I don't think anybody has any idea because they didn't have much of an identity under Brian Kelly, especially offensively. They're trying to win games defensively, but I don't know if they've got enough offense to be able to help their defense out. That only goes so far, and it showed in the second half of that Texas A&M game last week where they just got waylaid. So I'm going to say the LSU defense would have to play lights out, their best game, out of their mind, all those analogies that we can talk about in order for LSU to even have a chance to win this game. But LSU, if LSU can run the ball, which they haven't all year, they've been horrible. I think they ran the ball well against Southeast Louisiana. That's not a good sign going up against Alabama in their front. Now, Alabama does have some they have shown some vulnerability on that D line, especially trying to defend against the run this year. It showed in the Missouri game. It showed in the Vanderbilt game. But I don't know that LSU can run the ball well enough. I don't think they're good enough in the trenches up front offensively to be able to do enough to keep the Alabama offense off the field and allow their defense to get rested. I see this Alabama offense under Ty Simpson he won't win the game himself. Ty Simpson won't. But I think when they go to the run game against LSU and be able to chew up some of that clock and wear down that defense by the third quarter and fourth quarter, I think that defense is just going to be so tired they're not going to be able to defend. So I'm going to say, while LSU gets a little bit of a spark under the interim coach, they all like Frank Wilson. I've heard lots of great things during player interviews this week about his role and what he does with those players. They'll get a little bit of a spark there, but going to Bryant-Denny Stadium under the lights against number 4 Alabama, it's a 28-17 win for Bama. Probably could be more, but I bet you it's I'm going to go 28-17. Alabama barely covers the spread on this one. Next, we're going to move on to Auburn at Vanderbilt. There's a theme here between these two games. It won't go into the third one, but the theme here is teams with new coaches and how do they fare. So we're going to see, how does Auburn post Hugh Freeze, how do they fare against a number 16 Vanderbilt, who is a 6.5-point favorite? How do they fare after coming off of that close loss at Texas last week? man, the Vanderbilt offense and Diego Pavia didn't look particularly good last week, and they somehow still almost found a way to get themselves back into that game at the end. So this will be a defining moment for Vanderbilt. Are they really for real, or can Auburn get enough of a spike from being the post Hugh Freeze under new coach? I don't even know who their new coach is. I should have looked that up, but I don't think it matters at all because I don't think Auburn's very good at all. Auburn's offense is horrible. They can't throw the ball. They can't run the ball. They can't block. They can't catch. And their defense doesn't do anything special enough. Now, I haven't seen this team outside of Hugh Freeze, but I thought they were so wildly disorganized as a team. And you can see some of that on those fan blogs that you never really knew what you were going to get out of Auburn. But they found ways to stay close in games. I think a lot of their games are one possession losses. I think that doesn't happen here. I think Vanderbilt gets off the schneid. While they did look vulnerable last week, I think they get back on track this week. And I'm picking Vanderbilt in a 28-10 win over Auburn. All right. And our third game is our only SEC game that features two ranked teams. Number 3, Texas A&M, the 7.5-point favorite, at number 22, Missouri. The real question here as a Missouri fan is as I'm looking at this game, do I look at it with my head? Do I look at it with my heart? Because my head says one thing, my heart wants to say something completely separate, and I'm going to give you both here in just a little bit. But Texas A&M is really, really good, and they showed it in that second half against LSU. They looked unstoppable last week in that second half. Marcel Reed is gaining very quickly in the Heisman talk and going to put himself in one of those chairs at New York to give himself a chance. So that's one quarterback situation, a very solid situation at A&M. And Missouri has an unknown. They have freshman Matt Zollers making his first start after the injury to Bo Perbula last week, who'll be out for a little bit. Zollers looked pretty good in the time that he had against in the game last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say. And last game, he looked pretty good. He's had a couple of weeks to prepare, and I think he's going to be ready to go. He looks like a gamer. That's also the heart versus the head talking. Freshman quarterback versus upstart quarterback. So the real battle here, though, is going to be A&M's offensive line, a very, very good offensive line, against a very, very good defensive line in Missouri led by Zion Young. They have wreaked havoc in all of these, in their last few games against ranked opponents. They were in the backfield a bunch against Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia, and gave Vanderbilt a look that they hadn't seen, where Pavia used to, for the first part of the season, was just able to do whatever he wanted back there with no pressure, and Mizzou was able to bring pressure on that offensive line that hadn't been giving it up. And they did the same thing Mizzou did against Alabama several weeks ago as well. So if Mizzou can bring pressure on A&M and get Marcel Reed off of his looks, off of his reads, and off of his spots, I think it gives them a chance, because this defense will keep them in games. The offense just has to be given the opportunity and do enough against a really good Texas A&M defense to try to put some points on the board. It's going to be very hard for them to do that, I think. So I've got two picks here with this. My brain says one thing. My brain says A&M 34-17. I think A&M's really, really good. I think Mizzou is really good. I don't know. The unknowns of Matt Zollers at quarterback and what he can do for this offense really for a whole game needs to be seen. And it's trial by fire going against the number 3 team in the country. But my heart says Mizzou wins 31-28 on a last-minute play. So I don't know. You can take whatever pick you want there with that. My fandom says one thing, and any of you guys that are fans that say I'm a homer, that's fine. I'm okay. I'm okay with being a homer for Mizzou, because I'm a fan, and any of you fans for all of yours, you would do the same thing as well. So those are our 3 games for the week. It should be a good week of football. All kinds of good games all over the country. Have yourself a Pepsi. Tune in and watch some football this week. Until next week, we'll see you later. Have a good one.
Brought to you by Off the Rails Media. Life's more fun